Hey everybody, I'm just going to be making a quick tutorial. Let me first go into what this series is. This is the first video in a new series I'm creating for GFL server admins or above, along with managers. What I'm trying to get into is just trying to explain this general management within our new portal here, or not new, but the portal we use for anything, any server on our Anycast network, basically. Um, so I created a test user here. I gave it the typical permissions that a normal server manager would have. Um, and I'm just going to go over, what some of these things are, along with how you update a server and just some variables you should be aware of. So I'm just going to sign in here. Your overview page looks something similar to this more than likely, unless if you have more servers. Um, so obviously all the my account stuff is pretty self-explanatory. You can reset your password, you can set your first and last name and so on. Security controls, you can enable two-factor authentication if you like. Also should show active sessions here. Account API is more for advanced users. It allows you to interact with the API via REST API. Not something most managers will use. Anyways, if you click on the server in the panel here, the pterodactyl panel, you'll get more options. So the console, this is basically the server console. You can see like what's going on in the server, any messages being logged to the console. So that's pretty self-explanatory. There is two fun or four buttons here. The start button starts the server. Um, the restart. So I'm gonna explain the difference here. The restart button. So basically, each game server is in an egg, is what Pterodactyl calls it. And you get to input a restart command. So, for example, for CSS, it's just quit. Um, so it'll execute quit, and then that server it will shut down the container, and then it will restart. Now that might not always work depending on the game. So instead, what I typically do, unless if I know that the restart button works, is I just kill it instead. So killing the server literally kills the Docker container. It forcefully shuts it down, basically. Stop does the same thing as restart, but it doesn't actually start the container again. It just does whatever command is the stop command. You have memory usage here as well. I will say these can be inaccurate. At least I've seen they're mostly accurate, but they can be inaccurate. Um, and I'm hoping we can fix that sometime in the future, which is a high possibility. So yeah, you have the CPU usage and the memory usage. The file manager or management tab is just a built-in web file, like basically FTP. Um, you can edit files if you like. You can create files, new file, new folder. You can upload files. You can select all the files and do something with them all. Well, you can only delete them, I guess. So I feel like this is pretty useful for if you just want to quickly edit something. But for like uploading large amounts of files, I prefer using SFTP, which I'll introduce soon. But anyways, let's get to the other part. So sub users here, this is most server managers do not have access to add or edit sub users, but this is basically everybody who has access to the server, or I should say every non-admin, because admins in the panel get access to all servers, such as myself. Schedules, now this is pretty, I actually haven't messed with this much myself because I usually when I want to schedule something, I put it into like plugin code or something like that. Something better than having it handled in Pterodactyl. But if you like, you can put schedules here, it'll input the command on whatever pattern you use here. It'll execute the command during that time to the server console. So, for example, if you, I don't know, if you want to say something at midnight for like CSS, you can fill in all these options here, and I guess in the command itself, just do say this is a test like that, and I'll print as a console message, this is a test. Alright, now this is the fun stuff. Allocation, this is nothing you really have to worry about ever. So the IP address is supposed to be a loopback address, which is in the 127.0.0.0/8 range. So you should never look at this and say that the IP is wrong, because the IP is supposed to be in the loopback range. So this is a page you can pretty much ignore. Now this is pretty important. This is the SFTP details. So if you want to STP to the server, or SFTP, sorry. So you'll want to input something into, well, you'll want to open your FileZilla tab and fill out all the information and use your pterodactyl password as the password. It's the same for all servers. Once you change your pterodactyl password, you will have to change it for all the rest of the servers. The username is usually the actual username dot and then a random generated, I guess like 8 characters or so. Looks like. Yeah, that's pretty much. Just remember the port. Remember that's SFTP, which is basically secure SFTP or secure FTP. And yeah, that's basically it for this part. Now this is when, so you should have startup parameters. Now by default, managers, well, not by default, non-admins cannot edit the command line itself. So I just want to keep that in mind here. Now I'm going to go over some of the basics here. So the game/mod directory, that's basically the folder name of the game for SRCDS servers. So C strikes for Counter-Strike Source, CSGO is for Counter-Strike Global Offensive, TF is for TF2, and vice versa. Or etc., I should say. And for the application ID, that is the Steam CMD ID. For CSS, it's this number. For CSGO, it's 740. For Gmod, it's 4020. For TF2, I believe it's like a random number like this. Max players is pretty self-explanatory. You do not have to mess with this. This isn't even used anymore. This was something I did a while back with when we just had OVH servers. I had to create a custom Docker network for Rust servers because due to NAT reasons. I do not know what that is, but that is extremely annoying. I think it's probably here. Oh my god. I'm not answering that right now. Anyways, tick rate's pretty self-explanatory. Now there is one thing I want to note here. You can still see in the command line where these variables are used. It will be in squarely brackets twice, so 2 squarely brackets and then the variable name. As of right now, none of these variables are used in the command line. For any cast servers, you will see -IP, and it should be 2 squarely brackets internal _IP in caps, and then ending squarely brackets. If it doesn't say that, and if it says server IP, it's not going to bind the server to the correct interface within the Docker container, which is the IP tunnel in this case. So that leads me to go along with these variables here. The Anycast IP, that is basically the public IP of the server, is in the 92.119.148.0/24 range. The internal IP is the IP of the IP tunnel within the Docker container. This information, both of these, should be given to you. In fact, the server should be set up with them automatically. If you don't know them, you'll need to reach out to your DL or myself or Sai. I actually basically have the most up-to-date allocation config, so I would probably be the best to reach out because I have it on me. Usually it's 172 and it's either 20, 21, 22, or 23, and then two other octets. Okay, so the next thing, and this is the biggest thing for most server managers, is how to update your server. So for what you'll want to do is find out which node or game machine that your server is hosted on. And you can go back to the My Servers page and you can see the node and see how mine's GS11. So for any server or any nodes that isn't GS08 and GS09, you can simply go in here and change this variable, the server update variable, to 1, and you can restart the server and it should execute Steam command, and it shouldn't attach to IP tunnel, so the traffic won't go through the IP tunnel. The reason we don't want it going through the IP tunnels because compressor v1 currently has rate limiting applied to even TCP traffic. I did add an option to disable this, and I did a pull request to the to Dre's project, but GFL isn't using that at the moment. I really don't see it need to, and that's fireworks here. So yeah, it should be as simple as this simply setting that to 1. If you don't have it set to 1, it will still download, I believe. I don't think it will download because I think if I set it to 1 or if it's set to 0, it doesn't want Steam command. Anyways, yeah, set it to 1. If you notice the Steam downloads going slow, and you're on GS09 and well, I'll get to this later. Anyways, yeah, to set the 1 if you're not on GS08 or GS09, and you should be good. And then set it back afterwards because the game server won't start until you set it back to 0 because the IP tunnel doesn't get attached when it's set to 1. Anyways, if your server is on GS08 or GS09, there is a different way. It's an outdated way. I'm still working on updating all the servers. But yeah, so what you'll want to do is ensure there is either an update or a validate file created in the root directory of the server, and it has to be in caps. No file extension, just update or validate. So it would be like this. So for updating the server, you can create it, you can keep it blank. This will update the server, it'll launch Steam command in update mode. You can add a validate file, and that will launch Steam command. It will update the server, but also validate it. And the last thing you have to do is remove the Anycast IP. You just cut it or something, save it, restart the server. So the reason I say remove the Anycast IP, and this is what I'm getting to, is if you launch it with the Anycast IP still attached, it will spin up the IP tunnel, and all traffic will go through the Anycast network, all like the Steam CMD traffic. So if you notice downloads going extremely slow, that is the reason why. Because like I said before, rate limiting still applied, and yeah, it's not a fun time. You'll be waiting there for hours for like a 50 megabyte update. So just remove that IP, remove the Anycast IP, save, start it up again, and it should download without any issues, and then paste the Anycast IP back. Now there are also times that people want to download the Anycast, or not the Anycast, like Steam Workshop add-ons within the server itself, and people will say it's downloading. So for the solution for that is to, well, for any machines that aren't GSO8 and GSO9, you can set the update variable to 1. Now I don't remember if it binds. I think the server tries to bind to the IP tunnel um, before Steam or the Steam Workshop downloads its items. So if you have this set um, to what is the IP tunnel supposed to be, it will give an error saying not able to bind. Therefore, what you'll want to do in this case, if you want, Steam Workshop items to download it, is set internal IP to 0.0.0.0. What this will do is it will bind to the default um, interface IP, which is when we don't have the IP tunnel attached, it's the pterodactyl virtual interface, um, and it should bind without any issues, and it should download all the items. Now you'll have to set that back afterwards, otherwise it'll bind to the machine IP itself, which nobody really knows usually. And it's not the Anycast network, so you'll have to set that back to the internal IP. And you'll want to set the Anycast IP back if you're doing this on GSO8 or GSO9. So yeah, that's basically about it. I know I've written some forum threads on this, but yeah, I figured it'd help just making a video on it. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much all there is with the panel. It's pretty straightforward once you get used to it. I know everything's pretty messy right now, but with the new packet processing software and the new setup we want, everything's going to be a lot better. Everything's going to be automated, and eventually we're just going to have every server auto updating, which is something we should probably really work on, which shouldn't be hard either. I think Sai already did something with it, just it was buggy or some shit. Anyways, that's basically about it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If I don't respond, you can reach out to somebody else. If I don't respond, I apologize. I'm usually busy and I don't see messages. Anyways, that's basically about it. Thank you for watching.